Hello and welcome to another episode of Supercoach Insider. My name is Chris, and today we are finally going through what my team looks like after the preseason games and obviously before round one. So pretty much this is the team that I'll be floating in and the same structure that I'll be floating in right up until team announcements, essentially. So just waiting for that rookie news and any other relevant players that we might have. Obviously, me and the boys spent a lot of time dissecting and watching the games over the weekend to come to this knowledge. There will be other videos. We'll do a roundup of the preseason games. We've still got a few more team games to go through as well. So there's still a little bit of water under the bridge in terms of our overall team podcasts and videos, but we obviously will continue on and power on with those. We've just been a little bit delayed with life stuff happening in the background, and we did intend to record over the weekend, but then we realised that our teams were changing so rapidly that any content that we produced may be completely irrelevant by the next game or the next morning or whatever it may be. So we decided to just put a pause on things, take stock, and go through it. So yeah, this is how I'm going to be lining up. I'm very, very comfortable with this now, and I'll be able to go through and explain all my picks and why they are there and my structure, what I was looking for those players, what I did see, and I'm able to back that up with statistical data. So yeah, pretty evident that the team's going to be in all right shape. There's some 50-50 things I'm still sort of weighing up, and I'll go through that, I suppose, really right off the bat. And the first one really is Sam Doherty has come into my team at D1. Now, Dawson's been there for the majority of the preseason, and I do consider Dawson to still be fighting with Doherty for that D1 role in my backline and in most people's backline. I think that they're probably the best two selections in defence at the moment. You could argue Sicily in there, of course, as well for a little bit extra cash. But Stewart, I'm kind of avoiding at this point, mainly because he's got the Hawks in round 4 and Sydney in round 6, who both obviously like to tag halfbacks, and I'm pretty confident that he will get tagged, especially considering Hawthorn are happy to tag anyone in preseason games, let alone the season proper. So I'm hoping that, that's a great time to get tagged if you're looking to upgrade to him, because he'll be bottomed out in price, hopefully, after a round 6 tag by about round 8, which is when you should be able to go bring him straight through with one down, one up. So that's really the only reason why I'm offing Stewart. In regards to Dawson, I would love to have both of those guys in my team, and in my previous structures, is what I had. I just can't afford him right now, and I am still looking for ways I can get him in. The only real negative to Dawson that I can see is that he can also cop a tag at times. I do believe that they have, looking at their fixture, and I'll just pull it up here quickly. They have a pretty good run to start off with, but there is also a tag risk there. Oh yeah, so they also play the Hawks in round 6. So you're really splitting hairs at this point. Obviously, again, I do think he cops the tag. So hopefully he bottoms out and I can pick both of them up very, very early. But that is my thinking at the moment. Doherty's run, so they play Richmond and then Geelong, and then it's just like North, GWS, Gold Coast. It's like the easiest fixtures for about 4 or 5 rounds. And Doherty's one that could go on a run that could price you out. And so they're at that same upgrade time. So that is the only reason why I'm going, okay, Doherty, he's the one I want out of those guys. Look, you can't have everyone. And that's a simple, you need to establish that you definitely can't have everyone and just understand that that's okay. It's not the end of the world. So Doherty is my guy for now. That is fluid. As I said, it could change. So, don't take that as that's going to be my round 1 guy. But right now, those are my thoughts around it. D2. So, I'm still technically going with a premium selection. And the one that I was watching the entire preseason but couldn't lock in was Ridley, and I have now locked him in. Now, I was waiting really to see the role. So, you hear things about, he's going back to that, that intercepting role. He's playing that central role. They're working as a chipping style backline and controlling the football and blah blah. And then you see the game that Ridley had, the role he was playing, the 12 marks that he took a couple of kickouts. He didn't play. He usually plays like 95% plus time on ground. He played 87%. I noticed he was off a little bit in the last quarter. And the Essendon's opponent, who did Essendon play this week? Can't even remember. But they had only kicked 2 behinds, and Ridley had taken those 2 kickouts at 3/4 time. So in the last quarter, they had another 5, and then it was a bit shared around. So I'd argue that Ridley probably has the monopoly on that. Obviously, Redmond's going to have a couple too here and there, but I think even BZT had one at some stage. So the game was over and done and dusted, and they were just trialing around. But the thing that it's not only Ridley's role that I was watching, I was also watching Redmond's role and what that was like. And what they've seemed to be doing with Redmond is they seem to be playing a lot higher up the ground. So Ridley is that deep guy that can come in and chop out and intercept, etc. Redmond's playing really high halfback to the point where he's that guy that sits off the back of the stoppage at times as that defensive extra layer of protection if someone comes out the front. So he's there for an easy handball receive, etc. And I think that is a role that is prime for him. It's great for him and his style of play. But what that does is take him out of the region where Ridley is, so that Ridley's able to use his ball skills and accumulate the ball a lot more from that central defensive line. And that was really, really impressive for me. So, with him playing not in the same region, not collecting those real cheap handball receives off in the back pocket, etc., I think Ridley is the one that's going to capitalise mostly from a Supercoach perspective. And I think this is probably the best way that they can play. I sort of liken this to how Geelong used Stewart and Tui, and Ridley is that Stewart type, and then Tui is that Redmond type, and that's kind of how I view their roles. And so, that was confirmed for me, so I'm locking him in. He's also the only guy in that 500k range I trust. Dacos was obviously tagged. He looked all right when he went behind the ball, but was tagged and ultimately had a pretty poor outing. Young, without Ryan, what we saw with Freo was that they just share the ball along the entire back line. I think 5 of their defenders had between 17 and 22 disposals, with Young being smack bang in the middle on 19, which is exactly what I mentioned in the Freo podcast, is that they all share the ball and at all times they just play their role and there's not one guy that is the guy. Even when Luke Ryan comes back, he just slots in to another one of those guys. So, didn't like him. Obviously don't like Redmond in that role from a Supercoach perspective. So Ridley is the one, and I'm really settled on that pick. Now, here at D3, I have gone Yo. This is another one that this could change. So what I am considering is potentially another mid-pricer in the midfield, and then putting that midfield premium up to a Dawson and playing the 3 defender premiums instead of going Yo. But I think for safety purposes, Yo is the pick, because he's still going to be in a high percentage team, even as of this day, even though he had a semi-poor outing. He's still in 49% of sides. And I'm just not sure that I want to be on the wrong end of that if he goes 120 in week 1 on 2 or something like that. Also to consider, West Coast have a pretty easy run, I believe, to start the year. And I'm just pulling that up now as well. West Coast. So they play, North in round 1, GWS round 2, Freo round 3, before they get into some tougher matches. So they go Melbourne, Geelong, Port, Carlton. Richmond's easy for a halfback, and they've got Suns, Hawks, Essendon, Pies, Adelaide. So the first 3 games are really easy. Then they go around 3 or 4 harder games, and then it opens up for them again. So in terms of that, if he goes big round 1 and round 2, you're probably going to have to get him round 3 anyway. And at 49%, I think that he's kind of one that... This is one of those, I'm trying to outsmart the competition if I don't pick him. And that's just pure ego talking. So I've talked this preseason about trying to take the ego out of the picks and just picking solely on what's going to be better for my team instead of trying to outsmart Supercoach. And that's often what I've been doing in the last few seasons, which has been my ultimate downfall. So picking Yo is against that philosophy. So, I'm going there for now. Now, the one that's sort of bolted in is Liam Jones. So played very well. Obviously, was against North. But the way that he can score his Supercoach, I don't anticipate him scoring any more between 70 and 80, which is what he's in his role he's been able to do at Carlton previously. The thing that he's very, very good at is intercept as an intercept marker and intercept defender. When him and Wiedering were together in that back line, they were the number 1 and number 2 intercept markers in the league at the time. So very, very good one-on-one defenders. Now, obviously his use is not very great. He's not really used so much on the switch and things like that. However, didn't seem to worry the Bulldogs. They seemed to be able to play through him a lot, and they had a lot of confidence in his ability. So who knows what could happen with that pick? I know he scored obviously close to 100. I'm not banking on that. They're not playing North every week. But I think he can go 75-ish, and that's well enough at that price point. I was obviously considering Caulfield, but he didn't play the game. He's actually listed as an emergency, so that doesn't bode well for his round 1 chances, and just says to me he screams obviously sub-risk as well. Then I looked at Crozier. Crozier's the other one that I really liked. He scored close to 80, I believe, with only 53% time on ground. But the role is question marks, and the reason for that is Richards went down, and so did another defender, Taylor Derea. So what does that mean for Crozier's role? I'm not sure. And I don't want to roll in with a question mark at Crozier's price, which is only 10k less. He could be one correct. In round 3, Crozier's going bang and needs to jump on that instead. Bang, Jones down. Don't have to have cash in the bank. You can just go Jones down to Crozier. This is a pick I'd rather start with the more expensive option and the one with the higher job security, because obviously Ryan Gardner's down, so he's going to slot straight into that main role. Very happy with that job security that poses, especially over that first half of the season. Jinby, I think he's a must-have. He's now currently in 54% of teams for obvious reasons. Barely played over 60% time on ground for his ridiculous score in the preseason. Switching with Elliot Yeo. Every time he was in the contest in a centre bounce, he seemed to get the clearance. What a ridiculous round 1 performance. And they must be just absolutely licking their lips over at West Coast with what they've got in Jinby. He could be the best rookie of the year. And that's better. He could win the Rising Star over someone like an Ashcroft, just purely based on role. And he may shine a little bit more in that in the West Coast team compared to, say, in the Brisbane team, where there's a lot of competition for midfield role and for the limelight, etc. Though Ashcroft was impressive in his own right as well. All right. Last on-field pick in defence has to be Charlie Constable. Now, I did read somewhere that he had about 10 turnovers. To me, that's fantastic, because I see that as a huge bonus that he could score that well, have a fantastic role. The coach comes out afterwards and say he's done everything he can to be in that round 1 squad. So that Stuart Dews all but said, yep, he's playing round 1. And still have 10 turnovers? Yeah, and he looked fantastic. He looked comfortable. I'm a little bit concerned, obviously, about when Weller and Powell do return to the squad, what happens. I'm leaning on Long as potentially the guy that makes way or transitions to a different role or becomes a bit obsolete, but we don't know yet, I suppose, is the answer. However, I'd rather take that risk at 123k rather than someone like a Long at 350k. A lot more security in just his price point, in that even if he only gets 1 or 2 price rises, he'll probably still be able to trade him out or keep him at D7 or D8 while you play the other guys. And there are serviceable guys that I can throw on the bench anyway. So the one I've got at D7 is Wilmot. Looked okay. Doesn't get a lot of it. He's playing a wing role. The thing with Brisbane, and this is what I noted on the Brisbane pod, is that they do kick more than any other team in the competition, and long kicks too. And what that does is it means that the guys that rely on the kick mark to score well in Supercoach aren't going to do so. So McKenna, for example, he is not really an accumulator by any stretch, unless he can get that sort of kick mark, and use his speed and run and dash and carry through the midfield, handball receives, etc. But he's not the number 1 kicker. He's not even on kickouts. You've got someone like Rich and Coleman that are ahead of him in that pecking order. So he's really got to work hard for his possessions. Wilmot, with the ability on the wing, changes things a little bit. in that he's not reliant on having kickouts or anything like that to his scoring. Yes, and the scoring wasn't great, but I think at 123k, he can just sit at your D7 spot for most of the early part of the season, and then he'll be a slow burn, but he'll get you there eventually. I'd rather do that than spend 167k on a slow burn player who will offer the same, if not less. Now, Chesser I've got here in the final spot. Didn't have the greatest of debuts, but I think that, it's his first real crack at senior football. I think I'm going to run Chesser regardless of if his name's round one, because I do think regardless he plays early, and he's got huge upside. So Chesser's one I'm looking to play, and what I will do is I'll still run, say, I'm hoping a Sin Cotter, or is it Chin Cotter? I'm not really sure what the pronunciation is there. Out of that midfield, so that I technically will have, another defender mid that I can rotate through that back line to cover if I need to. Because, you are running essentially, two rookies on field and Jones, who at any point in time could be just dropped for no reason. You've got Yo as a risk for injury, so I do like the idea of running a defensive mid swing from that midfield option. So let's move to the midfield. This has not changed all that much. Oh, actually, I lie. It probably has changed a bit. By the way, I'm on the coffee today, but thanks to splashvodka.com.au. Obviously, all of that, but it is, I think it's Sunday at midday, so yeah, not really interested in jumping on the beers right now, unfortunately. All right, Rory Laird, M1. Absolute lock. 10 tackles in a preseason game because no one likes to be outstatted more than Rory Laird. I played an absolute blinder. He only played, I think, 73% time on ground. He had a points per minute rating through the roof. It's still his midfield. What more that I was looking for is I was really worried and concerned about Sloan and Crouch and how they would impact things. Crouch looks to be playing his trade in the VFL. He only had 25% time on ground. Sloan only had like 18% CBAs, I believe. I have to pull up those direct stats, but it was really low. So it does look like the guys that are going to be getting the time are already the guys that were last year. There's not much change, just a few little chops and changes here. And Laird's role has not seemed to be impacted at all. If anything, Berry seems to be getting more and more mid-time, which is great for his role. I don't think he's primed to be a breakout premium, but he could, I've actually tipped him to go 100 plus this year at Adelaide, and I wouldn't be surprised if he does. I picked him up in my draft squad just gone by the other day, so yeah, looking forward to some good stuff from him. The one that obviously I was on, and then I was off, and then I was on is Clayton Oliver, and now I'm off again. I just think at 700 grand, it's a large risk with all of the chatter coming out of Melbourne about his role changing and decreasing mid-minutes and playing in different positions and blah, blah. And I know he had 31 disposals despite his poor score because he looked a little bit of a step behind. I think that's just preseason jitters. There were times when he should have given the handball and didn't, and it just didn't seem like he really cared to be out there. Dane Swan-esque, I guess. So it could be nothing. But he also only had 65% CBAs, which is 22% lower than his season average last year. I can't say that's fitness because apparently from all reports he's as fit as a fiddle, as fit as he's been, even though he had obviously the hand issue. His fitness hasn't wavered. So is that just Melbourne trying a few things in the preseason, and then next week he goes back to 85+% midfielder? I don't know. I don't really want to find out at 700k, so I'm avoiding at this point, at this stage. I've actually gone to lock in Lockie Neal, and what I noticed there from Lockie Neal is that Dunkley and him can 100% operate in that same midfield. I think Lockie Neal, for his 120 or odd or whatever he got, he only had one tackle, which was insane. And I feel like that's partially because obviously he's had a few knocks in the preseason. Out of last week's game, I think he had 2 corkies and a dislocated finger. So maybe he was told, yeah, all right, maybe just don't tackle. Maybe just settle out a bit. And still got 120. Yeah, I think the upside's there. I think with Lyons not in the team, Lyons is an emergency. What we saw 2 years ago when when Lions was scoring at, I think, 110 plus as a premium, Neil went absolutely gangbusters. So having that second option actually helped Neil. And so I want to be on that. I want to be on it early. And the other reason is with Neil, you know that his early season scoring is much higher than his late season scoring. So if you want to be on him, you've got to be on him early. So yeah, I think Lockie Neal is for me, he's come in at M2 at a good time. He's also surprisingly in only 19% of teams, which is just huge. Like that's anytime you can get him at that, and Laird's at up to 21%, so he's gone up about 8% in the last couple of weeks, which is good. So yeah, I'm really liking that combination as the 1-2. Bont 3, lock him in. He had 64% CBAs. I think they'll all be around about that sort of level. He had 59% last year, so slightly more, slight bump out of there. On if you look at his previous years, that he's had about 64, like plus 60% in CBAs. He averaged about 120, so anticipating that he goes a little bit more than that. Hoping that with that role with no Dunkley, it goes up even further. But looking at a 120 average at a 116, you can't really go wrong there. He's going to play most games, and he's got a really, really good role to get in there. And at 640k, you can't really complain about that as an option that's going to go 120 plus. So, still think that Bont is also a really, really good option. Surprisingly, only in 27% of teams, which is really odd. McRae, I don't think I can pick, even though he went 115, had 30 plus disposals. He was the lowest of the first four in terms of CBAs. So he's more wing time again, which likely results in a 115 average-ish, which is fine. And what that means is you're paying for what you're going to get out of McRae, but you're not getting the 128 to 130 plus average that he has produced in previous seasons. So yeah, if you're happy to lock in a 115, then by all means, I think Jack McRae is a great pick. I'm just not sold on his ability to go up, and that's because Bailey Smith actually had even more CBAs than Jack McRae, and so I anticipate that between Libba, Bont, and him, then that will be roughly the top three with McRae coming in as that fourth mid. That seems to be the way that they're going to play. Trelaw coming in at the back end, which is, I think he had about 50% CBAs as well. So yeah, the one I want is Bont. I'm also wary of choosing round 15 buy players due to the fact that obviously there's a lot of them that we all want in our teams. So trying to spread that out and not go too heavy in one where I'm going Bont and McRae just puts a little bit of mind at ease there. Other guys I've considered this range is going down and say Josh Kelly, who performed incredibly well. I just think he hit 36 disposals. How many times does he do that in a season? Great role. He had 70+% CBAs. I think he goes 115. Does that mean that he's got enough to go 120 plus? We have never seen that. So a little bit wary, but also he's definitely underpriced regardless, because he's still probably 50k underpriced, Josh Kelly, in terms of what his output could be. His body's obviously the issue over time. So we all take stock with that. Tom Green obviously did nothing to sway against picking him. He's now in 29% of teams. But the value that he presents is just too good to refuse. I've gone completely off the Mitchell pick. He only had 61% CBAs. Great for Collingwood. I thought he played very well for his 100, but he's not going to get anywhere near that 110 to 115 that I anticipated he would get on that level. He needs to be the main guy, and he's not the main guy. In fact, they've got like 5 main guys. They're all going around about 60% there at the Pies. So Tom Green it is. LDU, underwhelming performance with, I think he had 87% CBA. So the good thing is his role, right? So they're saying he's our main midfielder because Simpkin is the one that's dropped out of the mids now. So he's the main guy. So I don't think that the points that he had yesterday kind of reflect how good LDU could be. I think he still goes 105 to 110 quite comfortably. But is that enough at his price? Probably not. You probably want more. Like he's good enough for, say, M8 scoring. But do you really need to pick someone at M8 scoring when you're probably only picking 4 or 5 mids? I don't think that you do need to. just let it be known that obviously they played Bulldogs, and Bulldogs had like 1900 plus Supercoach, and North only had like 1300. Like it was insanely low. So yeah, completely dominated the Supercoach scoring, and that's what they do. They have the largest differential in Supercoach scoring for any team at the Dogs. They score more points than anyone. So, all right, now moving on. So here's where the changes come in. So I was banging on about Setterfield in the preseason, partially as a joke, partially as I actually think he could be something really well. He came in and performed really well. 112 Supercoach, I think, on 26 disposals. First half of the game played all the CBAs, and then second half played all wing. And he rotated basically with Archie Perkins. And so maybe they were given a shot at who's the better guy that's going to be that third or fourth cog in that midfield. I think Setterfield comfortably won that. I'm not sure what that results in terms of his role for early in the season. But what I do know is he can score when he's got the role. The problem is with Setterfield, if you're going that way, how do you go Setterfield with who's only 2% owned against Hopper, who is 46% owned? So this is another one of those ego picks that I'm telling you about. So I'm going Hopper anyway, because my ego says that I want to be right and Setterfield's going to be the one. And let's say he is the one and he averages 100 points plus for whatever reason. Yay, I get a victory, but the worst case scenario is he doesn't do that and he averages like 70 odd. Hopper goes 90 like he's pretty much predicted to be, and you've lost out big time against 46% of the competition who also own him. So again, it's more I'm just picking him for safety, and the fact that I don't think it's worth the risk to not have Hopper, just to have Setterfield so I can have some podcast content and have my ego field. Even though I do believe that Setterfield is a better pick. So if you have Setterfield and you don't have Hopper, that's fine. It's just, I believe it's just an ego pick for me, and I'm trying to remove that from the equation. What I saw from Hopper was a bit disappointing, to be completely honest. He had a plus 30 SC to DT score, which is not like him. However, I looked at his history, and his averaging is about plus 3 to 5 on his DT to SC scoring. So he doesn't do enough supplementary things to score really, really well in terms of marks, tackles, etc. What he is good at is a clearance machine, right? So in that first quarter, I think he had 9 DT to 25 SC because he had 3 contested disposals, 2 clearances. And so, it was just a Supercoach scoring. But then he just completely trailed off and just went point for point for the rest of the game. And he wasn't great, to be honest, for the whole 4 quarters. He was sort of average, mid-tier average. Taranto was better. His scoring, if you just purely looked at his SC scoring, I think he had... Let me have a look at the stats from yesterday while I bring him up. And look, again, against Melbourne, a top-tier midfield, you can't expect him to do everything, but he ended up having 23 disposals, 8 kicks, 15 handballs, only 2 marks, 1 free against, 2 frees for, 2 tackles, 0 goals, 1. So, went 64 DT and 93 SC. Taranto, on the other hand, had 33 disposals, 8 marks, 1 free for, 2 tackles, and 1 goal, 1 for 124. Now, usually what we see with Taranto is his SC scoring is generally lower than his DT scoring because of his use and efficiency. But, he was definitely the better pick on the day. I just wanted to let you know. So that's how I view them, but I still think that he's going to be in my range. And the new kid on the block, I think everyone's looking at him, is Finn Callaghan. Callahan, I keep getting that wrong. Pronunciation's not my thing. Now, what I will say is that he looked amazing. Eye test, insane. One-on-one ball winning ability, insane. He's too big, he's too strong, he's too quick, and he's too skilled to not win one-on-one contests. And on that wing, he had a lot of one-on-one contests. They are largely left alone. there was a couple of times there where he took some intercept marks where he was just on his own. I don't know where the defensive winger was, but he was obviously playing as an attacking wingman and pushing forward at the contest, etc. He had 0% CBAs. So let's say there's an injury in that midfield, he's probably going to be the one to jump straight into those slots. But it seemed like to me yesterday they just played 4 midfielders purely. So obviously Kelly, Green, Cogs, and Perriman were the 4, and Callahan had none, not one single CBA for the entire game. So he's definitely playing wing, 100% wing role. The one thing that scares me is obviously Supercoach scoring from wingers is terrible, generally speaking. You're not looking for a premium score from him, but you are looking for something, say, 85 plus at his price. And I think that he can deliver that, potentially even more, just because of how skilled he is. But we rarely see wingers really break out in SC, and so that is sort of my concern, is that the role is not there. But the other one that he's competing with for me would be Flanders, and his role's also not there, but he also absolutely cleaned up with 30 disposals yesterday. So one of those guys will start in this slot in my team now, moving forward, and it's going to be Callahan or it's going to be Flanders. Right now I'm edging towards Callahan, mainly because of GWS to start to the season. They are an absolute... It's a whitewash of a start to the season. So I'd rather get on someone that could start hot rather than someone who's going to develop into it as the season progresses. I also, there's another opportunity in my forward line that I can still get Flanders without impacting too much. So we'll see what we do there. Now, obviously Ashcroft, again, so didn't have like a pure CBA role, but had enough CBAs and knows how to find the football. Very Dacos-esque in his way that he's able to get into chains of possessions and rack the pill up. And I was really encouraged by that. He just found himself in the right spots all the time. And that's an innate ability to be able to do that. So I really respect that, and can't go wrong there as a pick. The one that's come in here is Cam McKenzie. So he was absolutely lights out in the game against the Pies. I know the Pies barely put any midfield pressure on, but he had 61% CBAs, which shows you that the role is there, that they're looking to insert him into those roles. And his use was second to none. His decision-making was fantastic. And that's the sort of guy that can go really big really quickly. So I want to have him in my team anyway. Whether or not I field him every week is a question, I guess, but we'll see how we go. I've moved Phillips to the bench for now. Not overly impressive with his game. Role seems to be there. He's getting some CBAs. He was getting his foot to the ball, but his use was bad. Again, playing against a bigger, better, badder midfield at the Dogs who just destroyed the points. He had an off day. I still think he's going to be important for Cash Chen, and he'll have his games where he goes off. So it might be between McKenzie and Phillips, that last M8 spot. Who am I going to be fielding from week to week? But at the moment, I've got Phillips on the bench. Baker played fantastic. A little bit of conjecture over his role. I think he's played well enough, easily well enough to get a round 1 berth. Outside of that, it's going to be on him to make sure he maintains that. Apparently they weren't even planning on playing him yesterday, but they had injuries, so he came into the role and blew them away. I was overly impressed. There was a moment on the wing where the ball was going out, and he put in the extra effort to get it just before it went over the line, and he tapped it over his head to an oncoming player, and they kept going down the field, and I was like, wow, that was impressive. So his ball sense and his ability, I think, was a lot better than, say, just a random first-year player. His role, played wing, but played more sort of like high half forward to wing, and was definitely rotating between the two, but definitely didn't play, say, that defensive side winger. He was more that attacking side winger. So just keep that in mind. Now, as I said before, I'm going to roll with, at the moment, Chincotta. He didn't play too well in the first half, but had an amazing second half. Is it good enough? The coach came out after the game and said, Cowan or Cincotta is going to be playing round 1. Who that is, they're battling it out for that at the moment. That bodes not particularly well for job security purposes. If they have a bad week, you could see Cowan come in for Cincotta or vice versa. But at 102k, you go, okay, well, I got a bit of flexibility there anyway. Am I really, really worried if he doesn't get a game or if he's a bit of a slow burn 102 player? Um, there's really not any other playing 102 players that I would say I would want in my team. So I kind of go, well, excuse me, Shinkoda at the moment is the one that I want in my side. So we'll see. Now, onto the rucks. So rucks have changed a little bit. I've just gone with Wits at the moment. Obviously performed very well. He had a very low time on ground. I think he didn't play any of the last quarter, but still scored very, very well. His points per minutes were through the roof. He looked dominant against Bruce and Flynn, who didn't fire a shot at all. Threw their weight around, but didn't really do much in the ruck. But Bruce is generally a pretty good ruckman, like man to man, a pretty good ruck. So that bodes well for Wits. He looks fit. He was covering the ground well. English look okay, who's the other one in this spot. It's more for the security at this point. I've got the 25k there. This is one of those picks where this is one that could change to English if I need the extra cash. Like if I need that extra 25 grand to make a slight adjustment in my team, or maybe I need to get Chincotta up to Cowan or something like that. This is how I would make that money. That little 25k is I would then go down to English. I worry still with English with the pie. I mean, they had 1,900 Supercoach points, and he only scored 85. He didn't have the majority ruck time. I think his time on ground was lower. Maybe they're just easing him back, obviously with his injuries. Ceiling, yes, is there, but this is something that English can do. He can literally just tune out a stinker like this. They had Norton in the ruck at times. They had Lob played about 25% in the ruck. That's not ideal. I thought that would be more like 10%. Wits, I think, for me, a little bit safer at this point. And, of course, Marshall, who was on 100 at halftime, 49% owned. 51% of coaches need to check themselves before they wreck themselves. That is a ridiculously low for his output. And then, of course, I've gone Madden here for the loophole purposes. So moving on to the forward line. Now, this is where there's a big shake-up, and I will explain my picks, so don't get crazy defensive about it. So Dunkley's obviously not going anywhere, let's be honest. That was an absolutely amazing performance. I think he went 146 or 150, something like that. Just classic Dunkley, does everything right. There was a moment there where he went to ground after attempting a tackle, and then didn't get back to his feet, but just dove from the ground and laid a tackle and got a holding the ball decision for himself. Classic dunks. Absolutely brilliant. Again, should be in 100% of teams, 66% owned. Yeah, he's going to be the number one. I think he's still potential to go number one overall for the whole year. So let's go dunks. I did have Cogs. Cogs isn't necessarily a bad pick, so ignore his score because he had lower time on ground. There was an article after the game about Cogs and his time mid forward split, and it looks like he will be playing out of those three main mids. He's the one that they're going to be using as that striker, so he will get a lot of mid time, but he'll also play a lot forward. How does that impact his scoring? Probably not too much because he can obviously still score forward, but he's the one that's more expensive than the others with the most question marks over his body, and I just don't think that if I have to let one go, that he's the one. So at this stage, I've actually gone with Rosie here at F2, who just looked a class above the entire team. He had 80% CBAs. What else is there to say about Rosie? He's just absolute jet. Was surprised about Butter's lack of CBAs. However, that could be because of his AC joint that I think he had a bruised shoulder or something like that from a tackle or hitting the ground or something like that the week prior. So this could change. I don't expect to see 80% CBAs next to Connor Rosie's name ever this season. But if it's going to happen, fantastic. I think he's more around 50%, which is still fine. And so you've got a big 30% buffer of CBAs there. So Rosie's the one out of that sort of other three that is not moving for me. Here's where it gets interesting, guys, because Errol Goulden had the best preseason game I believe that I've ever seen. I could not believe how well he played in that mid role. He played very well. It's sensational the week before too, I would say, and he had about the same amount of CBAs, about 70%. That's not going to hold. Mills comes back next week. How much does that impact that midfield setup? Does Parker go forward? Does Rowbottom get less CBAs? Has Goulden done enough to prove to Horse that he should be considered in a top three midfield role at Sydney? Maybe. Is it enough to get 40 to 50% CBAs? And with his skill level and his ability to rack the pill up anyway outside of that mid spot, can he still go 100 plus? Yeah, he can. So I think he's one. I'm not sure you have to be guaranteed to start him because I understand the question marks. You could also start with, say, a Taranto or a Butters or something like that, or whatever, whoever else that you're in love with at that pick. And then round 3, if he's just topping off, you go over to Golden then, or Goulden, sorry, again, pronunciation. But I love him, and I love watching him, and I want to be on him. And that's probably a bit of a biased pick. But with everyone also getting on him, I think he's more of at this stage, he's not a casual pick. He's gone up to 22% owned. I find that the people that will be on Goulden will be all the guys who watch this podcast, who research a lot of preseason and watch preseason games, whereas the casual fan base won't be on him. Now that could give us a leg up in the immediate short term, but I loved everything I saw times 10. Couldn't take my eyes off him. Was watching for when he was next in a chain. There were times when he'd get 3 or 4 disposals in about 30 seconds of play and was just in the right positions everywhere. His foot use was amazing. Great pick. Absolutely amazing. Can't believe that Sydney got him where they did. And he's just going to be an absolutely outstanding football player moving forward. Now, that leaves, of course, from the big 4. So no Canelio, Taranto. Now, I did say that Taranto played quite well. I just don't think that role is necessarily sustainable. Now, I'll tell you why, but I did a bit of a deep dive into GWS versus Richmond in the last few years, and this is part of what I did with also Hopper, and looking at Hopper, is that Richmond seem to have less ruck contests than any other team over the last few years. I think they average the second lowest, yet obviously their win percentage is quite high. That's their style of play. So they don't want to actually tie the ball up and have repeated contests and ruck contests, etc. They want to get the ball moving in general play and then utilize that, win the ball off half back, and then use their precise foot kicking skills and speed with forward handball to transition the ball into the forward line, and that's how they score very well. That's the Richmond game plan. That's not how I see Taranto playing into that. Now, he had 8 marks last week on the weekend. It's just really unusual for a Richmond midfielder to have, but that is his game. So maybe it doesn't matter about their game style. Maybe he just knows how to get the pill, and it's going to be good, and it's fantastic, and that's all good. I just don't think that 120 is indicative of something that he can average, personally. I also didn't really like, I think Hopper had 81% CBAs, which Prestia obviously went off. How much did that impact everything? I'm not sure again. I'm just bringing up the CBAs for Richmond so I can tell you about Taranto, because I think it was lower than I anticipated it to be. Here it is. Yeah, Taranto 65%. That's too low. If he's going to be having 65%, he's averaging 100 at best. He had, I think just under 50% last year, and only averaged 95 with high rock contests and everything like that. I can't see Taranto getting 65% as a good thing if that's going to be a normal average. I said in the preseason podcast, if he's getting 70 to 80%, that is where you can see, okay, maybe he's got that 105 to 110 potential, but I don't think that's there. So to me, that says he's probably going to be around the same price, or maybe somewhere between 500 to 550k as an upgrade target during the season, and he's not necessarily one that I need to absolutely must start. But again, I could get to round 3, be completely wrong, and I want to make sure that I have the flexibility. So I could go Golden up or Goulden. up to Taranto or something like that at some stage, and that is a possibility. At the moment, I've locked in Zeebles here still. So he had 15 disposals, split the kickouts with Luke McDonald in the back, which I think will continue. But 13 of those disposals were kicks. So what we obviously know from Jack Zeeble is that he scores well from kicking the ball a lot. And he had, I think, 85 Supercoach. Let me bring that up. His Supercoach SC to DT was ridiculously high because of his disposals. Bring it up on my phone. Sorry, guys. I should have been more prepared, shouldn't I? Here we go. So Roll was as predicted, playing that, again, centrally, a little bit loose at times. Defender, he's not obviously taking a tool or anything like that. 86 Supercoach, 15 disposals. He only had 2 marks for the day, which was impressive in itself, and only 3 tackles with a free against. His DT was 58, his SC was 86, just because of his incredible use from the back half, and lots of meters gained as well. Had a couple of kickouts. As I said, didn't take all of them. It was basically a split with McDonald, so that's fine. In a game where the Dogs absolutely destroyed Supercoach scoring, I see that as something that he could definitely improve on. He's not going to have 15 disposals for the rest of his for this year. I think it'll be significantly higher than that, closer to that 20 range, and there is where I see him going anywhere between 90 to 105. And I want to be that guy on a 350k player. I think that he's got the potential to be a keeper, whilst also making cash. Will he make 100? If he's not a keeper, then he's going to make 100k, which will be enough to get him to a premium by one down, one up quite easily. So that's the other thing. Obviously, in the forward line, you're only probably looking between 500 to 550k as an upgrade target. So you don't need Zeeble to make 150k, and if he makes 150k, he's probably a keeper anyway, and there's not much point. But definitely has keeper potential for sure. This is where I've got another one of those picks that could go either way. So at the moment, I've gone with Brun, and just based on his performance, his role over the last 2 preseason games. So in the first one, he had about 70% CBAs. That dropped down to 50% CBAs. But his scoring is quite impressive. So had about 112 Supercoach. He's been likened to Zach Merritt, and the way he played, when I looked at him, his use was incredible. And that's how he's going to be able to score well in Supercoach. I do fear that also lends to him being maybe a sub-target, and I don't like how deep Geelong runs pretty much all over the park. And they didn't have 5 guys that would be arguably in their best 22 in Cameron, Hawkins, Isaac Smith, Jack Bowes, and who was the last one there that is also out potentially? Oh no, there was another one there off the top of my head. I'm just not sure that he gets into the 22 and is one of the mainstay midfielders, because he did have 50% CBAs. But his performances, you can't ignore. So does Chris Scott give him an early run? Yeah, probably. Does he stay there? That's going to be up to him. I do want to be on him, though, if he goes big. So the role is good enough for him to score anywhere from 85 to, let's go 80 as a basement, right through to 100 if he really gets consistent midfield time in there. And that's going to be a pick that you're going to be on, want to be on. Now, again, so you could use this pick and go down to a Flanders, but he doesn't have the role. So I think if you're flipping up between the two, Brun has the role but less job security. Flanders doesn't have the role but has more job security. So you could take a coin flip approach here and go, yep, I'm going to go with Flanders or Brun. One of them's going to go better. Again, I'm erring on the side of I'll get the more expensive guy, and if I need to correct that after a couple of weeks, I will do so. So I'm taking Brun at the 310k mark in order to be able to go down to Flanders and then free up a little bit of cash if I need to. And that could impact my other side. So it could even be even after 2 rounds. I could still go to Flanders and then use that 60k to upgrade, say, Goulden, or to get Callahan up, or go Hopper up to Setterfield, or switch out Yo, or whatever it may be, or get Neil to Oliver. There are options there. So again, starting with the more expensive player sort of yields you a little bit of freedom. And so that's what I've done here. And I've gone here with the rat at the last pick. Now, just really, there's two reasons. First of all, I thought McLean's role was deplorable. I can't see him being anything better than a bench option at 178k in a forward position with that role. He did not get a single CBA. He was nowhere near the ball. He wasn't even pushing up to the ball from his role, playing a lot of deep forward. When he did get the ball, he was really highly pressured, looked like he didn't use it very well. I was super unimpressed with McLean. So until further notice, he's out of my team. I'd rather have the rat here. He gives you a bit of ruck cover, of course, if Witts or Marshall go down, or especially if I'm running English, then you've got a little bit of cover there. He looked good. Didn't score all that well this week, but he was playing on Joe Danaher, and they absolutely got walloped. So I give him a bit of a pass. I think he looked good when he had the ball. He roosted the ball. Like, if they want to get the ball to the hands of someone who can roost at 70 metres, Rat's the guy. He was strong in the contest. I thought he made overall good decisions. Just didn't really reflect on a Supercoach basis. I think he got 40 or just 50. What am I expecting from Rat? I think he averages somewhere between 60 and 70, maybe on that lighter side. I know Jack Henry, playing in that role, averaged 61 last year. So that gives you an idea of whereabouts his scoring is probably going to be. It's not going to be anything crazy, but I think he's got great job security as well. And so someone on field at F6, that's what I'm looking for over McLean. I don't even think McLean has job security. He played that badly. He could be the sub. Not interested. And on the bench, so I've got Green here. He played really, really well. Obviously, the Hawks aren't going to score well every week, but I thought his decision-making was good. He's just a good, genuine, honest footballer. He leads straight up at the footy, no mess, does good things with it. He's not going to score 84 every week, but that's why he's a bench option. I thought he was one of the better bench options. And the other one that I like is Davey, Alwyn Davey. He looks really good as a small forward, but his mid-defender is really what I'm after. So it gives me a bit of flexibility if I trade in a mid-forward, mid-forward he is, into the midfield at some point. Then I've got a bit of flexibility there from the bench. He looked like very lively, could read the ball well off packs, good crumbing small forward, gets involved, gets high up the ground. Didn't mind him at all. There's not many other guys in there at this sort of price. I mean, you could go with Kyle Chandler, looked all right. I worry about Kyle Chandler because obviously Bailey Fritsch isn't there. Does he come out? Because he was leading up to the football and they were utilising him. Is he the Fritsch replacement in that team at the moment? A little bit worried about that. Combin didn't look great, but again, they got absolutely dominated. There's a few picks there. Philippou looked all right, but he's probably a little bit more too expensive to someone that I want to have on my field. Sheasel's one that I know people are running and people can run if they want. I just think that he's going to go like this and really be rough to... he needs to string a few games together to score to increase his cash gen, and I think that he's going to be erratic with his scoring, and that's not going to bode well for cash generation. And then do you really even want him on field at 200k? Are you really going to have him on your bench? Probably not. Ben King, I'm not interested in that at all. So I think Davey at the moment is probably the one at F8, but we'll see. I'm open to other things. But that is the team, guys. Fairly balanced. I feel like, I go right to the end with guys that are going to be, on field, good, decent scorers, right the way through my my options there. I've got pivot material and players. I'm on picks that could otherwise burn me. It seems to be a really well balanced side. This is probably the best that I've felt about a team so far. And just so if you're playing along at home and you're like, okay, so how did I get to this point in terms of picking my team? I started from the rookies and worked my way up. So after watching the preseason games, I went through the defense, picked all the rookies, bang, 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 bang. And then I went, no, I don't like them, I don't like him, I don't like him. guys at McKenna, not interested in. Here's why, blah, blah. And then work my way down. And then I went up to mid prices. Okay, who do I like from there? Defender, I didn't really like any mid prices, but Yo obviously at 46%. So yeah, popped him in, etc., etc. And then I started to develop, okay, how much cash do I have left? How many premiums do I need in my team? Who are the best premiums that can get me the best return out of this cash allotment? And that's how I've really ultimately guided my selections. So give it a go at home after the preseasons. Do your own research. Watch as many of the preseason games as you possibly can. And then wait for your round 1 teams to be announced, and then you can modify from there. But I'm really happy and comfortable with my team, and hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you next time. Catch you guys. Bye-bye.